Do you believe that this is a must win? Looking at the schedule ahead, looking at how long some of these other players are going to be out, do the Rams have to win this game? And at what point does it become a must win? If not this week, then does week 4 become a must win? Is it week 5? Like the bye week in week 6, I think the Rams, the way that everything is played out, a lot of these guys aren't out for the season, which means coming out of that bye week, as long as nothing else happens, which is asking a lot at this point because it seems like every week the worst is happening, they will actually have a relatively healthy, complete, good-looking roster coming out of an early bye week, which early bye week's not normally ideal, but I think in this circumstance it probably is. But if you go into that bye week and you have one win, that can't happen. So is week 3 a must win for the Rams, in your opinion? Whether it's fantasy football or higher lowers, Underdog has got you covered. Link is in the description. Promo code LSS to get your deposit match 50% up to $1,000 and your one free pick. Underdog, make picks, win money. Shout out to Underdog for being a great sponsor.
I think every game moving forward is a must win. Collect as many as you can and hold out hope until those reinforcements come. It's not like, you're going to war and all of a sudden you're like, well, we don't have our best sniper. We don't have our best, gun runner or whatever. So let's just stop, fighting. It doesn't work that way because other people are going to fight back. So that's what it happens. I mean, the 49ers have a game to play. Whether the Rams are ready for it or not doesn't hurt the 49ers. They go out there, they play, they win. They have, goals. And, obviously, I'm sure in the back of their mind, they're probably looking at this like, we could bury the Rams here and make it so a team that maybe we viewed going into the season as kind of like going to, compete for our spot in the NFC West and at the top. Now they have a chance to really bury them. And I do think that is possible because, by the way, Jesse, I do have the stats. So,
of course you do. I would be looking at them too if I was in your situation.
Since 1979, only 6 teams have made the NFL playoffs after starting the season 0-3. And the last team, the reason, by the way, 1979, that was, I think, the first expansion. So that's what the significance of that year is. But the last team to make the playoffs starting 0-3 was the 2018 Houston Texans. And I'll tell you this right now. Last year, the Rams went through a rough patch. They lost Kyron Williams to an injury. This is after a blowout win against Arizona. He didn't leave the game. Everyone felt great about him. And then the game ends, and you're thinking, wow, the Rams look like the best team in football. And now Kyron Williams is going on IR. And you're like, what the hell's going on? And then you find out the backup running back, Ronnie Rivers, is going on IR. So they have to go and they have to bring back Darrell Henderson. They sign him. Royce Freeman becomes their number 1 running back. It was a whole big mess. But the reason I bring that up is there's significance there. Going into week 11 last year, Jesse, the Rams only had 3 wins. So I don't actually think people realize the type of team that this was at the end of last year, what it had to be. They pretty much had to win every game. They had some help, which is why losing in overtime to a really tough Ravens team in, I think, week 14 didn't end up being the deciding factor for them. But it could have, Jesse. It absolutely could have. If the Seahawks take care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's probably, the Seahawks are probably in the playoffs. So there's a lot of things that went into last year. And I think a lot of people forget about that. And I understand people get really freaked out, when you hear those things. 0-6, the last, or whatever it was, 6 teams since 1979 that have made the playoffs at 0-3. I get that. But the Rams are also that organization that loves doing these things. They have this bizarre, how many teams went from 4-12 to 2 years later being 13-3 and in the Super Bowl? So they've done a lot of these things themselves. And last year being 3-6, the only thing that you could say was better than that and making the playoffs was the Jaguars. They were 3-7 the year they went to the Super Bowl, or went to the playoffs with Trevor Lawrence. So, Jesse, I'm not looking at it like it's a death sentence, but win because you're supposed to win. Don't win because you have to win. Win because you're supposed to. I mean, the funniest thing about this whole thing, Jesse, is this. I just said going into week 11 last year, the Rams only had 3 wins, right? If they beat the 49ers, beat Chicago and Green Bay, they're coming out of the bye better than they were last year. Just think about that. That's how easy this whole thing can go away. But the 49ers are a great opponent. They're tough. It's not going to be easy. And I'm not going into it assuming they'll win. But it is a reminder, if you could steal this one, you're in really good shape, I think, because I'm pretty much already looking at this like, yeah, if this is a loss, they're 0-3, you take one from Chicago, you take care of business at SoFi against Green Bay, you're 2-3 coming out of the bye against the Raiders. The Vikings game became tougher. Seattle, Miami, New England. I mean, I think that they can win, up until that week 11, I think they can win more than 3 games, which puts them in a better position than they were last year.
That is crazy to think about that. And I would agree. I mean, I think the Rams can get 2 wins before the bye week. Go into the bye week, what? So they play 6 games, right? And then week 7 is a bye week? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so week 6 is the bye week. So then they come out.
So they'll have 5 games. Okay. So if they could be 2-3 coming into the bye,
that's
and
fine.
Then get some of these guys back, I think they're going to be in really good shape, actually. I mean, maybe not in shape to win the division, which that's awesome. I don't want them to have any home field advantage in the playoffs. But them, if they could stay healthy the rest of the way and make the playoffs, I mean, that's a really, really good football team that not a lot of people would want to play. I mean, it would actually kind of remind me of when the 49ers snuck in a few short years ago, beating the Rams, and then ended up making it to the NFC Championship, losing to the Rams. But remember, along the way, they went to Green Bay, the number 1 seed, and knocked them off. And then went in and played the Rams in a very highly contested game. So I don't think you want to play a team like that fought tooth and nail, went through all the adversity in the world, and it was like, yeah, we still had the gumption to make the playoffs. So now what? Here we go. I wouldn't want to play that team. So yeah, I don't want them to be injured is the reason why they lose. But if we could go into that by 1-4-ish, I'd be much happier.
Yeah, people are already assuming that they're gonna go into week 6 by 0-5. I don't necessarily think that's a fair assumption. I mean, I understand, and trust me, I get it. Arizona was really upsetting. It was upsetting to me because I'm one of those guys where I watched SoSar Rams football. I watched AJ Feely on Halloween while all my friends were out trick-or-treating. I watched AJ Feely and I enjoyed it because I went there every single day, putting on the TV and watching these games and having to go out to watch them because they weren't on local TV in New York. But I went out every day knowing I was getting to see my favorite team play football. And as long as they put in the effort, which you cannot say this team wasn't talented, these teams weren't talented in the past, but they put in effort. Last week was inexcusable, indefensible, just sacrilegious to what Rams football should be. And Sean McVay, make no mistake about it, was not happy about that game. So I do think that they're going to make some adjustments. And I think even though we don't know how good Detroit is technically, and we'll see, I guess, this weekend against the Arizona Cardinals, and then we'll be confused again. Because if the Cardinals are, they beat him, are the Cardinals not that good because the Lions aren't that good? It's just a whole big thing. But my point is, just because they lost most recently to Arizona the way they did, shouldn't nullify the effort, the guts, everything it took to get back into a 17-3 ball game and take the lead on the road against a team that was just in the NFC title game.